great ski and snowboard filmmaker Warren Miller once said, "If you don't do it this year, you'll just be 1 year older when you do." Well, hello my friends. For the next few moments, what I'd like to do is review my bike ride that I took, 827 miles, 14 days of riding from Key West, Florida up to Beaufort, South Carolina. It was a great ride, and just going to go over some of the things that you may encounter if you decide to do the same thing, and I know you want to. I had to start off my trip, as many people do, by getting on my bike and riding down to mile marker 0 for that great photo opportunity. I'm sure you'll want to do that too. Now immediately into your trip, you're going to find beautiful scenery, turquoise waters, you'll see wildlife, you'll see turtles. Another thing that you'll find on a long distance bike ride, the people that you'll meet, like this gentleman, and then this other gentleman that I ran into that was local. And one of the nicest men that I met on the trip was this roadie. He took the time to talk about what I was doing and what he was doing. And so we had a very nice conversation. These are the highlights of the trip, not only the scenery, but the people that you meet. Here I was camping in my tent on the beach at Big Pine Key Fishing Camp. It was very quiet early in the evening after I had turned off the light in my tent and I was reading a book with my headlamp on. All of a sudden, I felt a tap on the top of the back of my head and I almost jumped out of my skin. What could it be? And here I'm all alone. There weren't too many other people in the campground that night. And lo and behold, in the morning, I found some tracks of a key deer. Now in Big Pine Key, it's a sanctuary for key deer. And they're very short and they're protected. Well, they're very tame. So little did I know that I would have a friend visit my tent late at night. You might too. But it was a great experience anyway. So as you progress on your trip going on the overseas highway, you'll come across many nice areas where you can get off of the main highway and ride on these bridges that were made just for cyclists, walkers. So in combination with those bikeways, there's also a lot of on-the-road cycling on the overseas highway in the Keys. For the most part, it's safe. You're going to run into some beautiful little bike paths that are surrounded by trees. So if you're not going to camp, there are many hotels easy on, easy off the bike trail. One of the things that you may be wondering about, where am I going to find a bathroom? I found that I was never too far away from an outhouse. This one was in downtown Miami. And as you're cycling along any construction site, and there's a lot of construction going on in Florida right now, most likely going to see an outhouse. And just pull in the construction site and ask one of the ladies or gentlemen that are working there, "Hey, I'm on a long trip. Can I use your facilities?" They're going to say yes every time. After you get off the Keys and you've gone through the city of Homestead, but one of the things that you're going to have to get used to is going over bridges. If that's a problem for you, fear that you may want to conquer on this trip. As you can see here, this bridge that goes over the Intercoastal Waterway was one of, I would say, about a dozen crossings that I made in Florida across the Intercoastal. I have to say that the mother of all bike paths is the one in Miami in South Beach. You'll be amazed at the beauty, not only of how the path was put together and the Art Deco designs on the ground, but also the beautiful views of the ocean and also the culture as you go through South Beach. Now, I think I need to warn you, if you go through South Beach in the middle of the tourist season, you may end up walking your bike. because it'll be wall-to-wall people. When I went through, it was on a Sunday morning in October, so I got to go through this path at the speed that I wanted to, and I stopped for lunch along the way. Check that out in one of my previous videos. I stopped at the Pink Taco, and it was a little cool place. So as you make your way north on the coast, you're going to want to stop to take photos and videos constantly of the beautiful scenery like you see here. You're going to be riding your bike through some flooded areas, maybe as much as 10, 12 inches deep. So make sure at the end of every day you find a water hose and you hose down that salt with some fresh water. As you go up the coast, time and again, you'll be going through one beautiful seaside community after the next. And take your time, stop, say hello to folks. As you continue up the coast, make sure that you take the little side trips. It'll be worth it. As you see here, this beautiful little path that went off the main road behind some condos, along a canal, and right through a marina actually, before I came back out to Route A1A. You'll go through beautiful golf courses, amazing tree-lined bikeways that are made of cement, and also bikeways that make you think that you're in the middle of the desert. I was just south of Melbourne, Florida, and I ran into this beautiful new bikeway running along the Intercoastal Waterway. This thing went on for miles. There were winds blowing like crazy. 20 to 30 mile an hour gusts. So yes, I did use my low gears in this part of Florida, but it was all part of the fun. Right after you enter Titusville, Florida, you'll encounter a very long portion of the trail that will keep you off the road, miles and miles through the woods, where you'll be surrounded by trees at one time, and then you'll be overlooking what looks like the Great Plains in another time. And then when you least expect it, when you're cycling along the road, there'll be a little path for you to get off the road, and it'll go through the trees, and you'll think you're in another world. It's very, very cool. Another highlight of my trip was I was going along here in Florida, and all of a sudden I'm looking at my map and it ends and there's a river, and I figure, what's going to happen here? I don't see a bridge. Lo and behold, I go around the corner and there's a ferry. Check it out in one of my previous videos where I talk a little bit about this ferry. It was quite an experience going across this waterway to get to the other side of the St. Mary's River, and there's a cool blue bridge that goes across it. It's only about 300 or 400 feet long, and it's been known to be an intimidating bridge. No, it was fine. If you're at all scared of bridges, just walk your bike across it. It'll take you 2 minutes. You will now be in the state of Georgia. So that's quite an accomplishment, isn't it? If you started in Key West, you've gone all the way up the coast of Florida. I know if you've ever driven it, it takes a long time. So just think about it. You did that on your bicycle. Because at any age, there's nothing like a long distance bike ride. So as you make your way through Georgia, you're going to find miles and miles of roads with absolutely no traffic on them, at least in October. That was the way. I'm sure during the tourist season, things would be different. And I'll never forget this little boardwalk that I ran into in the middle of nowhere. It was the most picturesque little respite from riding on the road. If you take this ride, you'll never forget the Spanish moss trail portion of the trip, where the Spanish moss is just hanging from the trees and it looks like you're in another world. And then I came across the Belle Bluff Island campground in Townsend, Georgia. It was a real treat also. It was very laid back. The lady told me to put the money under the door that I had contracted with Ron, the owner, and was able to put my tent up in a nice secluded place. So it was a really nice campground, and I strongly recommend when you take this trip that you camp right there. So the next morning I woke up, packed up my tent in the dark and took off. I was going to have a long day in the saddle and I wanted to get a head start. So that morning I encountered all kinds of things. Torrential rainstorm, beautiful off-road paved bikeways, and then I'll never forget, and you won't either, downtown Savannah. It takes you right through a park. It went on for maybe a half a mile before I was back out on the street again. So then eventually I was out of Georgia, across the South Carolina border. Now in South Carolina things were a little different. I was able to go through a beautiful park, and it was early in the morning, and this park went on for miles and miles. No traffic whatsoever. After the park, once again, I did run into some nice bike trails along the side of the road. But for the most part, the trail kept me on the road, as you can see. This was about a 1 mile long causeway in the pouring rain. So that day I ended up in Beaufort, South Carolina, where I made the decision, as talked about in my previous video, that I would stop my ride there. I would rent a pickup truck and take myself and my bicycle from Beaufort up to Charleston, South Carolina, where I'd catch my plane to go back home to Connecticut. And one of the main reasons why, you will see in this road, there's actually no shoulder at all, 65, 70 mile an hour traffic. I was not going to put my life in jeopardy. I had just spent my 68th birthday on the trail, and I want to live to see my 69th. Wouldn't you? I think so. So that's pretty much a review of my trip. If you decide to go on a trip like this, at any age, if you can pedal a bike on flat ground with maybe 20 or 30 more pounds of equipment on your bicycle, you could do a trip like this. You really could. It's not that difficult. Prepare for the rain. Prepare where you're going to stay. So I hope you enjoyed this series. The next video that I'm going to do is preparation for this year's tour. I'm going to go from Beaufort, South Carolina up to my home in Connecticut on much safer roads this time. I'm really going to go through what it takes to prepare for a trip like this. So I hope you'll join me then. Thank you, and just remember, the best place on earth to ride your bicycle is where you're riding it today.